Okay, how's that?
I don't know.
We're just going to have to leap into the unknown then, aren't we?
And then we'll know.
Welcome to CoupleCo, working with your spouse for fun and profit.
It's business and it's personal.
I'm Blaine Parker.
Which makes me Honey Parker.
And we are a couple who've been in business together.
For over 20 years.
Over 20 years?
No, not really.
I was afraid of that. Well, it's been almost 20 years, according to the boss, and we've lived to tell about it. And in the process, we've met other incredible couples who are in business together and decided to bring them to you so you can hear their inspiring stories of crushing it in 21st century entrepreneurism without crushing each other.
This podcast is also brought to you by a couple-owned business.
Smokin' Mary Smoked Bloody Mary Mix.
Made in small batches with no reconstituted tomato juice, only fresh, whole tomatoes.
That's an awful lot of whole.
And it's fresh.
Smokin' Mary Smoked Bloody Mary Mix. Hey, nice tomatoes. Online at smokinmary.com. We want to put a special thank you out to our iTunes reviewer of the week, who goes by the name A CoupleCo Fan, and who writes in part, Honey and Blaine are an awesome couple and have the coolest job ever. Thank you, fan. It takes awesome to know awesome, and we salute you.
And if you're a listener who'd like to end up in the CoupleCo Fan Hall of Fame and Let's Feel Good About Us Club, leave a review at iTunes.
Do that, and we will mention you here in the podcast to the inevitable envy of all your friends and family. Today, we are venturing into the world of a micro winery couple who decided to start making Napa wines 750 miles away from Napa in the most alcohol-unfriendly state in the nation. Dennis Romankowski and Gina Cochimilio of Cognition Winery in Park City, Utah.
Dennis and Gina are serial entrepreneurs. It seems like they never have fewer than 4 businesses going at once.
And somehow, they make all of them work.
Gina's been a visionary in the healthcare field and admits she's often the one who comes up with the crazy ideas for the winery.
Dennis admits that their business is trial and error, experimentation, and going out on a limb.
Gina says that you never want to give Dennis a checking account.
Yeah, me neither. And coming from a 24/7 working environment in an entirely different career has had an unusual impact on their business. Here now, Dennis Romankowski and Gina Cochimilio of Cognition Winery. All right, we are sitting here in this beautiful home, the beautiful mountain palace of the proprietors of Cognition Winery in beautiful Park City, Utah, Dennis Romankowski and Gina Cochimilio. Did I get that right?
Yes.
I got it right. It was almost my first try.
I'm impressed.
We have had the pleasure of working with these two. They have the first winery ever in Park City, Utah. And we have helped them get past the idea for the public that Park City wine is the punchline to a joke. Because it is not. This wine is really good.
It's exceptional. We've been working with Dennis and Gina for a few years now, but we recently got back from Napa. And after several Napa tastings and came back and sat down with a few bottles of Cognition wine and felt no bump in the road. It was just
I didn't
perfect.
even know you did that.
Well, we didn't invite you.
Just drank it all
It's
ourselves.
us and Gina.
Secret mission. It was a secret.
But anyway, so
comparative mission.
cheers before we get going.
We are drinking a different wine, not Cognition wine, a lovely Renwood Grand Père Zinfandel.
Well, we felt wrong bringing them their own wine.
It's like, have you tasted this?
We have more downstairs. We can open up ours.
Yeah, we'd be completely hammered by the time this interview is over. So, we've got to ask an incredibly important question about you and your business. How did you two meet?
He picked me up.
In a bar.
In a bar, of course.
Perfect.
Hot Rod Hunley's karaoke night. Wednesday. Right after Taekwondo lesson.
Were either of you singing?
No, heavens no. You don't want either of us to sing. No.
Well, you're obviously musical. We're sitting here with a grand piano and a couple of saxophones.
I was told not to sing.
We want to be musical. We're really not. Yeah. I was there at a business meeting, and obviously after a business meeting you hang out afterwards, which I did.
Yes.
And was sitting there with a friend, and he walked in a little later and by himself.
Yeah.
After Taekwondo to come there and have a beer.
It was a tradition. A good buddy of mine and we took Taekwondo together. He couldn't make it one day, and typically that particular day of the week was Wednesday, and that was March 17th.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Okay, so
And
you were at a bar, karaoke bar. You see her.
I'm sitting alone with a St.
Oh, well,
Pauli
it's-
Girl Dark, watching and laughing at the performers.
Do you really want to hear this long story?
Yeah.
It's a funny one.
Yeah.
You know, this-
all the better.
we can
got-
edit
we
this.
got
You can
plenty of time
edit
and
this,
plenty
so
of
it's
wine.
a long story. So I was sitting there with my girlfriend, and I saw him walk in, and I leaned over to her and I said, "Is that guy as cute as I think, or have I had too many beers?" And she said, "No, he's pretty cute." And I said, "Okay." So he sat facing me at
Facing the stage,
two-top.
but yeah,
And so
right off the side.
we sat there for a while, blah, 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 blah. And then it was probably 2 hours later. And by then it had gotten dark, and some guy came over and was hitting on me. Well, after 2 hours of drinking beer, and Dennis and I were kind of eyeing each other up, I was trying to get away from this guy that sat next to me. And long story short, I finally had enough, and so I decided to get up and go say hello to him, gutsy as I am, because he was giving me googly eyes.
And I thought she was going to come over and go, "Hey, buddy, you got a problem?"
Stop staring. So I went over and said to him something to the thing of...
I know exactly what you
You
said.
do?
You said, "Would you do me a favor?" And I said, "Sure." This guy, Oren, is been trying to hit on me, and I don't want him around. And so I took the liberty of telling him that you were my ex and that we were trying to get back together. And if you wouldn't mind just playing along, I said, "Sure." So she went back and told Oren, and Oren said, "Oh, I don't want to get in the middle of you two. Go ahead. I'll leave you alone."
Interesting that the guy ended up living in our neighborhood, and we ran into him a few weeks later at Smith's. You know, but
Where everybody
anyway,
meets.
long story short, we've been together ever since. So anyway,
How many years ago was that?
Well, that was in 1995.
Oh, wow. So it's not like it happened yesterday.
No.
This is...
No.
what's
all
that?
right.
Moving on.
All right.
All right. Well,
So the
let's
next
fast
very
forward
important
to
question.
much later.
Yeah.
What made the two of you want to do something as crazy as starting this business together? And as crazy as starting this business, period, because you are the first winery ever in Park City, Utah.
Yeah, so
Well, we
this
were-
is in addition to just we're going to start a business together. You were really starting a business that's incongruous to the area.
Well, we were crazy enough to open up a restaurant in her mom and dad's restaurant in Sandy, because her mom had passed away and he was alone, and his tenant moved out, and all of a sudden at breakfast one day she said with Dad, "We'll help you out. We'll rent it out," because he was complaining that
Are
his
you trying to prove
his
how
residual
crazy
income-
we really were?
So she said,
Bring it
"Dad,
up
we'll
to
do
current."
it." And I said, "We'll do what?" Well, we started a restaurant.
I really don't think the winery was really Dennis. This was Dennis's dream.
Yeah,
wasn't
because we
it?
didn't have a restaurant in mind back then, or a bistro, whatever. But
The
the
winery.
winery, yeah.
Well, then let's jump back for a moment and talk about, Dennis, your background in wine, because it's not casual.
Oh, back when we had that restaurant is when I started being extremely interested in wine and wine pairings and the whole vinification, fermentation, aging process and all that. So I started doing that domestically, starting out with the small 5-gallon carboy kits, making wine in our basement and in a big laundry room, bigger than the one we have now. So, and some of them turned out okay. Some of them turned out less than okay. And some of them I still have.
Really?
Yeah.
However, you were doing.
Well-
your background is in soils.
I've been in science, environmental sciences, for a very long time. Been an environmental consultant, been involved with chemical waste management, and what brought me out to Utah was a company out in the West Desert that I was environmental manager for. So all the environmental sciences helped me get a basis for what winemaking is, which is basically chemistry.
Yeah.
And magic.
Chemistry and
The way
magic.
you do it.
And luck.
I think
And it's trial
any
and
vendor
error.
I've ever met would probably agree with you on that.
It's probably well known amongst the brethren and sisterhood that, it's trial and error, it's experimentation, it's going out on the limb, trying new things, and much like the mulled wine, that was out on a limb.
Yeah,
Nobody that I know has ever bottled mulled wine.
For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, why don't you explain the mulled wine, which has
Mulled
been a
wine.
huge surprise, I guess.
Mulled wine is an après-ski beverage, popular in Europe, UK. It's a base of usually a red wine or varietal with various spices and juices added to it and mulled. It's always served hot. So when you have it made, you can make it fresh, you can have it bottled.
Perfect.
You put brandy in at the very end before you bottle it. Filter and bottle it, in my case. So you get the benefit of a nice, spicy, toe-warming, fireplace
In ski country,
sitting
that's a good thing.
type of a beverage.
And
So,
this is like you've taken the town by storm with this, haven't you?
well, I've had a lot of positive reception for it. Some of the ski resort, they have bought it, cases. Some of the restaurants, but once they try it, a lot of the restaurant owners know about mulled wine. They never realized there was any availability of buying it and not having to mess with it themselves. So samples of it have convinced them that they surely want it.
When you were learning the wine trade, so you spent time in France and Italy studying.
We got to go back a couple years, back in 2013, early 2013. Gina and I realized that we were aging.
It happens.
We're going the Merlin route. We decided to go the other way.
Yeah.
We did. We wanted to. We were wanting to get into something that we were passionate about. Gina, with her background in home care and hospice, geriatric care, felt like she wanted to stay involved in that. So we reached a critical decision point where we said, well, what do we want to do? I mean, I could do environmental at an hourly rate all my life. The nice part is I could do it most anywhere. But it's still, I needed to figure out what project I needed to book ahead of time when my current project was finished in order to keep the hourly rate income going. Well, Gina announced to me that she had signed up for she has a number of masters in nursing. She had signed up for a master's in nursing practice online in Marysville University in St. Louis. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want a winery. And she said, okay, where? I said, well, probably in, California, outside of Healdsburg, blah, blah, blah. She said, well, once I get my degree, I plan on practicing in Park City. Would you consider a winery in Park City? I said, well,
It's your fault.
I'll have to do, kind of. I'll have to do a lot of the wine biz math to figure out if it's, feasible. And I came back to her and said, yeah, it is. She says, well, you've been doing all this domestically. You've just been doing small and larger batches. How would you get that experience? I just said, well, I'd have to be an intern. I'd have to get the hands-on experience. And she said, well, how do you do that? Well, I contact some friends that have wineries and ones we met in Italy, and then dovetail that to France. And she said, why don't you call them, see if they'll do that? So I did, and they said, yeah. Work for free? You can do everything we want you to do? Sure.
Well, and California. So I said, I'm going to be starting my degree. I just as soon you do it now. Off with you, be gone. And so he did. There
was a clever barb in there, too.
A few months off and left and went to Italy and France and California and spent some time interning there before he came back and did that. So that's when we went into the winery business in Park City.
Wow.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
Asked a lot of questions, took a lot of photos, and had a lot of time at night to gather information about equipment for a startup, because you just don't want to spend money on equipment you don't need.
Not to mention the licensing in Utah.
So this is clearly, it was Dennis's passion. Not that, having known you, I certainly understand that you enjoy your time in Italy and France and wine bottles and such. But at what point did you become a major player? Because you really have been
right from the get-go.
I mean, this is, it was, he said wine, but you were kind of all in.
When I presented the budget for the equipment.
Yeah. Dennis
said, oh, no.
Well, in every couple, you each have strengths, right? Dennis's strength is the winemaking and taking that forward. But I think we both know that my strength is definitely the planning and the driving forward and the
budgeting and everything.
The banking, the budgeting, the accounting, that whole thing. You never want to give Dennis a checking account and say, do this. So I handle the business side of it. He handles the winemaking.
So I guess that actually leads us to a question that would have been coming anyway. How do you work together?
How do we work together? We work together. I think our biggest
it's morphed over the years.
I think our biggest challenge is how do we not work together? Because it is a 24/7 work together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just takes over everything. I think that has been our biggest challenge.
Yeah, especially with your semesters and donating all your time to what we opened up as a bistro.
Yeah, maybe we should probably explain that Dennis and Gina had a winery and then opened a bistro as a way to sell more wine.
Yeah, we decided to get in the restaurant business.
Foot traffic
in Utah because of the limitations of the liquor laws.
Yeah,
you can always. They become more lenient when you have a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so having been in the restaurant business before and me being the chef, I decided to, there's a good idea. Gina will open a restaurant to go along with the winery. And so we did that, having only recently phased out of that again. So, yeah.
And maybe we should address that just because I think it's really interesting. You opened the bistro to sell more wine. Mm-hmm. And you sold more wine.
We sold more wine in the restaurant.
In the restaurant. Then what happened?
And then we found out that what was happening is the restaurant was literally taking over the entire business, not only time-wise, but it was taking all of Dennis's time away from his main goal of selling wine and the winery.
And making wine.
And so we kind of pulled back and said, let's reevaluate this. In fact, it happened again just the other morning. I said, we're sitting there laying in bed talking about, even since we made this decision, we were sitting there talking about things, and I said, let's look at what we've been talking about all morning. We've been talking about food. We've been talking about the menu. That's not even supposed to be our primary focus, and yet it still is. And we're only doing small bites. Why are we doing this?
One of the questions that we usually ask is, how do you not bring work home, or do you not bring work home? And you're saying that you're basically having a business meeting in bed.
Yes.
Without getting too intimate. I mean, is that typical? I mean, is that like, it's like wherever you are is where we have a meeting?
Unfortunately, it still is pretty typical.
Yeah.
And do we draw lines in the sand?
Well, we did.
We haven't been very good at that yet.
We did
pay attention to the lines that you draw. I guess
we did with her because you had to withdraw from being at the bistro. At what was the bistro at the time?
It is now the Cognition Winery and High Altitude Tasting Room.
Yes. And so
you mean because of my other focus?
Because of you having to, since you already missed a semester completing that.
Because of my other business, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. But not because of personal versus business.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you, is there ever a time where you say, you know what, work is off limits here, if this is just you and me, or is work part of you and me?
We say that, but then sooner or later something comes up. It could be a telephone call.
Yeah.
An employee wanting to change a schedule or wanting a W-4 form or
I think work, right now in our life, work is part of you and me. It's been part of you and me forever. And to try and separate you and me, work is you and me.
Yeah.
The business is you and me. I don't know how you say.
No, I
Stop
get it.
that.
I mean, we've had times where we've been on a hike and I've literally had to stop myself because thoughts pop into my head all the time. You know, it's like a popcorn machine. It's just constant. And
Is that what that noise is?
yeah.
Yes.
And I keep thinking, well, it would be wrong. I'm ruining this hike by bringing up work, but it's really hard to just wait. I mean, I'm very much a list maker. I'm always running down lists in my head. I'm the organizer.
I think we've been successful at maybe saying, okay, for this couple hours, we're not going to talk about work. Or for this 20 minutes.
Let me just tell you that one of
forget it.
The biggest interruptions
reality.
on the whole thing, which was unavoidable, was having our bistro on OpenTable and Yelp. Because managing the reservations on 2 different sites and coordinating and figuring out which site takes priority, that took up so much time. And it was just like conflicts. And then it was gearing up for that amount of people, 6, 7, 8 covers, each 6, and then all that, and then trying to gear up not only on the food prep, but also on the serving staff.
Well, but I think...
And then have them not show up.
I think I have to go back. I think that people that are in the restaurant business do that all the time, and they don't do it the way we do it. I have to go back, and I think that our history, and I'll take the blame for this myself. I think my history, because I've been in healthcare, and I've owned, home health and hospice, and I've been on call 24/7 the whole time we've been together. And I think what it did was it set a standard. And my phone has been on 24/7 since we've been together.
Oh, yeah.
And so because of that, I've been on 24/7.
Yeah.
And I deal with things 24/7. And so I think that we've gotten used to 24/7.
So you don't really think about it.
No. And so when things come in, we deal with it.
Is it
And so
normal?
it's easier to deal with it when it comes in than it is to normal people, may wait
it'll
until
wait
they go
until
to work.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah.
deal with it. We deal with it as it comes in. And so from our standpoint, I think it's just something we've learned.
Well, we don't want to disappoint. I mean, that's basically it.
You know?
And how does that, you don't have little kids
No.
in the house, but how does that affect family beyond the 2 of you?
Well, the rest of them pretty much know that if we're going to an event, we're most likely going to be late.
Hey, it's just something that it's just part of our lives. It's just, we've gotten to where we handle it pretty normal.
We were talking to a couple of vintners who said, anybody in the family, or who's married in, who isn't in the wine business, they just hate the fact that every time we all get together and the other half of the family
Yes.
is all in wine, all they do is talk business.
Yeah.
And they just have to get used to it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't do that very much with family.
No, because the rest of them aren't in the wine business.
Yeah, so it's just you guys. So it's like you didn't impact little kids. You never had to worry about that.
No.
They just have to worry about your family being annoyed that you're late.
Yeah. And they're all older, so,
Right.
Okay. What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you on the job in the winery?
Oh, that's easy.
What?
For me.
Go ahead.
Let's see if it's 2 different things.
Yeah.
For me, the craziest thing was the phone call in the middle of the night saying the tank was leaking. Is that the best thing for you?
Yeah.
Easiest thing?
Yeah.
Tank was leaking.
Yeah,
Well,
our Cabernet Sauvignon.
we had our cab over at the old winery, and we got a call from our next door neighbor saying, I've got something coming in underneath my...
This was at the first winery location.
Right.
I had been doing pump overs. Red wine, the Cabernet, was in the tank, and the cap, the skins, it has to be punched down. Usually you have a punch down tool to do it, but when it's so thick, it doesn't matter. You can't punch it down because it's so thick. To get it softened up, you take and pump from the bottom of the tank the juice over on top of your cap.
No, that's interesting.
You saturate it, you get it soft, and then you punch it down, and you do that once, twice a day during fermentation.
Right.
Skin contact, it helps prevent any type
Short
of
story.
bacterial contamination. Well, I had all the hoses connected to the pump. I had the hoses bungeed to different parts of the tank. Well, what ended up happening is I didn't close the bottom valve. It flowed through, and the top hose that for the pump over fell off the tank onto the floor, and it started draining.
Oh.
Started draining the tank. Unbelievable mess.
So Dennis went over, and he's
Unbelievable
expecting, I don't know what he was expecting, but he called me and he says, Gina, you got to come over here. And I walked in, and the whole floor was just wine.
Oh, no.
She's
Red.
like big
And
tray
we
of
literally,
cheese.
we literally just started mopping.
Call a bunch of friends and pass out a bunch
And
of
it
straws.
was just so sad.
We
I mean,
ended
it
up
was so
losing
sad.
a little over 30 gallons.
Oh my God.
I can imagine that made you so sad.
It was so sad because it was one of our first wines, and we were starting up, and it was one of our best wines. It was the cab, so it was it was sad. So
well, the wine is
but
just-
So when I say that the Cooper's cab
it
was
took so
was
much.
really a labor of love, it was
That's
a
the one?
labor of
Yeah.
love.
That
That's
was
the
the-
one, yeah.
Cooper, in case you're wondering, is their dog. And he is a, miniature schnauzer?
Yeah.
And
Toy schnauzer.
Toy schnauzer. And he's called Cooper because he's a mini?
Because he's a mini, like a Mini Cooper, who's afraid to come up the stairs because the stairs are open, so he would go right through.
This isn't a casual thing that happened. I mean, you obviously just rolled up your sleeves and dug in it together. I mean, there's no...
You don't even think. You just get out the squeegees and you get out the shop vac, the wet shop vac.
I think about it now, and I still get sick.
And then, after all was cleaned up, then I had to figure out how to get the stain out of the concrete.
No.
Man.
So I had to etch the
Is
entire
the concrete was not
floor.
sealed?
No.
No, man, it's
with
all porous.
muriatic acid.
Oy.
Anyway.
Anyways, concrete floor.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
then.
boy, that smelled good, didn't it?
Well, the
Muriatic
next door
acid
neighbor,
wine.
next door neighbor got a complimentary something or other for the
I'll
the
bet
hassle.
he did. All right, so moving to something a little less,
Stressful.
yeah, but it
But I
might.
think you're still going to be stressful.
It is,
I
it's
know
just-
what's coming. You're going to be a little
yeah,
stressful.
it could be stressful. Okay, business wise, what do you think
drink
the
some more wine.
pitfall is to avoid when you're working with a significant other?
Divorce.
Best answer to that question
Yes.
so far.
Moving on.
one of my guiding principles in this whole deal of knowing I was going to be working with her that frequently, because when I had the winery out and it was just a winery tasting room, Gina was pretty hands off, did the budgeting, and we did invoicing together and all that kind of stuff. But when it came to doing this project of our new location, it was don't automatically throw out an idea that she might have based on the fact that it hadn't been done or blah, blah, blah. If it cost way too much money, of course, but to just kind of have an open mind on new ideas because, had never done this before. And getting involved in a restaurant, she certainly had more wherewithal and knowledge and experience than I had, because I was the front end. She was everything else.
Generally, when it comes to I'm generally the new idea person.
Really?
Yeah. And when it comes to the
Because
crazy
you're not
ideas,
stuck in the wine.
when it comes to the crazy ideas, it's usually me. Dennis is much more conservative than I am, generally.
Well, it's interesting because, I would also think that Dennis has definitely got an artist's soul, yet you are coming up with creative innovations frequently. I mean, having worked with you doing marketing and stuff like that, that's technical term for
Stuff like
everything
that.
around marketing.
Et cetera, et cetera.
But, I've sat across the table from you and just kind of seen an idea hit you where you're like, and you're charged by it, and it's like, this is nuts, and nobody's done this, but we should be doing it. And that comes from you.
Well, also, I think that in following that, you had talked to us about doing more marketing for the winery than we've been doing. And you said something I've heard people say many, many times before. But coming out of your mouth and seeing the look in your eye, I knew absolutely you meant it. You said, have fun with it. And, usually when people say that, they mean, well...
as long as you don't freak me out.
Yeah, don't have too much fun.
No, but it was an invitation to kind of go crazy and bring something that maybe you hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
We had entertained.
We were talking about walking a bar down Main Street or parading a bar down Main Street. That's a good idea.
DABC wouldn't be happy with
historically speaking,
just the bar, not the liquor.
Historically speaking, I mean, even when if you go back when my daughter and I opened the first inpatient hospice in Salt Lake, never been thought of before.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems like a gimme.
Never been done before. Never been thought of before. When I said to her, I want to build a 30,000 square foot building. Let's do it. And she said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "No, let's do it." And we did. I mean, it's like, yeah, let's do that.
Right.
That's one thing. In fact, we still have a stone engraved that I was raised to believe by my parents that, if I can imagine it, I can do it. And I'm still crazy enough to believe that.
What did your parents do for a living?
Oh, they were in the bar business.
No wonder.
That's why when Dad said, at breakfast, Amber Restaurant, and Gina's, and he was complaining about his tenant leaving, going back to Chicago, and now he didn't have a tenant in there, and blah, blah, blah. And it was Gina's idea at the table. He said, "Dad, we're going to do it." And he said, "You're going to, what?" And I said, "What are we going to do?" And Gina said, "We'll open a restaurant." He just about had a conniption. "Oh, no, you don't want to do that. You'll be in prison. You'll always be in prison."
Really?
It's the biggest pain in the ass. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Well, and I think in fairness to Dennis,
Dad will do it.
Some of it's always easier for me to do it because I'm the one that handles the money. So, Dennis is always,
that's one thing.
I've handled the money.
True.
And so, he trusts that I handle the money and I know where it is. And
she wouldn't do that to us.
But I've done that to us before. But if we go under, it's me that takes us down and it's me that makes those decisions. So, oh well.
This concludes part one of our conversation with Dennis and Gina.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and you think it would be useful or fun for other couple entrepreneurs, please go to iTunes and leave a star rating and a review, and that will help them find it.
And join us next time for part two of this interview with Dennis and Gina, where we hear them talk about how Gina's parents could do some crazy and impulsive things.
We'll hear how the scientist Dennis has had an impact on the intently business-focused Gina by helping her to slow down and appreciate the more important intangible things.
How they were almost broken not by something as crazy as a winery in Utah, but something as prosaic as real estate.
And they can't imagine running businesses with other people and still being able to have a personal life at home.
Next time, here on CoupleCo, working with your spouse for fun and profit. For more information on CoupleCo, visit CoupleCo.com.
Copyright 2018, all rights reserved.
Love you, baby.
Love you too.
CoupleCo out.